Love is not loud. It does not always arrive with grand confessions or dramatic gestures. It does not need a spotlight to prove its existence. Real love moves quietly, strategically, and deeply. It reshapes behavior before it reshapes words. It rewires priorities before it announces intentions. And if you pay attention, not to promises, not to charm, not to temporary excitement, but to consistent psychological patterns, you will recognize when love has truly taken hold. Because when someone is emotionally captured, the mind changes first and the behavior follows. And once behavior changes consistently without force, without pressure, without manipulation, that is when you know the heart is no longer free. Psychology teaches us that attachment transforms identity. When feelings deepen beyond attraction, the brain begins integrating another person into its sense of self. Decisions are no longer singular. Time is no longer personal property. Energy is no longer self-centered. And this transformation cannot be faked for long. Infatuation performs, ego performs, desire performs, but emotional investment rewrites habits. When priority shifts naturally, not occasionally, not when convenient, not only when lonely, but consistently, you are witnessing emotional anchoring. A person who is not emotionally invested protects independence. A person who is emotionally attached protects connection. And there is a profound difference between those two motivations. Independence seeks space. Attachment seeks alignment. Notice the shift in attention. Attention is the currency of affection. Where attention goes, emotional energy flows. If someone remembers small details you casually mentioned weeks ago, if your preferences begin influencing decisions without being requested, if your comfort becomes a silent factor in planning, this is not politeness. This is cognitive prioritization. The brain does not store and retrieve emotional data for someone it considers temporary. When the mind catalogs your moods, your stress triggers, your ambitions, your fears, that means you occupy mental space long after conversations end. Another powerful psychological indicator is protective behavior, not possessive, not controlling, but protective. There is a difference. Possessiveness is rooted in insecurity. Protection is rooted in care. When someone instinctively ensures your emotional safety, avoids actions that would hurt you, becomes mindful of how words affect you, that awareness signals depth. Emotional protection is a subconscious investment strategy. People safeguard what they value. Watch for consistency during inconvenience. Anyone can be present during ease. The true marker of attachment appears during discomfort, stress, or personal chaos. If communication does not disappear when life becomes demanding, if effort does not decrease when things are not exciting, if reliability remains stable even when energy is low, that stability reflects emotional seriousness. Temporary interest fluctuates. Emotional attachment stabilizes. There is also vulnerability. Genuine emotional investment lowers defenses. When someone begins sharing fears, insecurities, childhood wounds, personal failures without being forced, it means psychological trust has formed. Trust is the foundation of attachment. The brain does not expose weakness to someone it sees as temporary. Vulnerability is risk, and risk is only taken when the emotional reward feels significant. Another sign is future integration. Not dramatic promises, not exaggerated declarations, but subtle inclusion. When future plans begin naturally including you, next month, next year, long-term goals, without hesitation or pressure, that indicates mental permanence. The human mind does not project long-term scenarios with someone it intends to lose. Casual interest stays in the present. Emotional attachment builds continuity. Notice emotional regulation changes. When someone cares deeply, your emotional state begins influencing theirs. Your happiness elevates mood. Your distress causes genuine concern. There is emotional mirroring. This is a psychological phenomenon tied to empathy and bonding. Indifference cannot mirror. Only attachment can synchronize emotional rhythms. Another critical marker is effort without audience. If thoughtful actions happen without social media visibility, without public validation, without needing recognition, this is authenticity. Performative affection seeks applause. Real emotional investment seeks impact. Private effort carries more psychological weight than public gestures. Pay attention to conflict behavior. In temporary connections, conflict triggers withdrawal or ego battles. In emotionally invested dynamics, conflict triggers problem solving. If resolution becomes more important than being right, if communication replaces avoidance, if repair follows disagreement, that is attachment maturity. When someone fears losing connection more than losing an argument, emotional value is high. Observe boundaries. Emotional investment respects boundaries because it values sustainability. Disregard for your limits signals self-centered desire, not love. When someone adjusts behavior to maintain your comfort without resentment, it reflects emotional alignment. There is also the shift in social integration. When you are introduced intentionally to important people in their life, not casually, not secretly, but confidently, it indicates seriousness. Integration into social circles is psychological acknowledgement of importance. Humans protect their social ecosystems. They do not invite temporary attachments into permanent spaces. Look at communication patterns. Frequency alone does not define depth. Intent does. Are conversations meaningful? Are there check-ins that show awareness of your day, your workload, your emotional state? Is silence uncomfortable or secure? Emotional attachment creates secure silence. It does not require constant noise to survive. Notice patience. Impatience often signals self-focused desire. Patience signals care. When someone respects your pace, your healing process, your ambitions, without pressuring outcomes, it shows emotional maturity. Love that rushes is often trying to secure possession. Love that waits is confident in its bond. There is also accountability. Emotionally invested individuals take responsibility when wrong. Ego-driven individuals defend. When apologies come without manipulation, without blame shifting, without minimizing your feelings, that accountability demonstrates value. People protect what they value by correcting behavior that threatens it. Pay attention to effort during distance. Physical absence tests emotional presence. If communication remains consistent, reassurance remains active, and emotional intimacy does not fade during temporary separation, attachment is stable. Temporary desire weakens with distance. Emotional bonding adapts. Observe how achievements are handled. If your success is celebrated without competition, without insecurity, without subtle undermining, it shows secure attachment. Insecure connections compete. Secure attachments support. There is also the matter of emotional availability. Someone deeply invested does not emotionally disappear when things get intense. They lean in, they listen. They ask questions. They seek understanding. Emotional avoidance is a defense mechanism of those not ready to attach deeply. Notice how they handle your vulnerability. If your tears are not dismissed, if your fears are not mocked, if your dreams are not minimized, that response reflects emotional respect. Respect is love's foundation. Another sign is behavioral adjustment. Without being asked, without dramatic announcements, subtle changes occur to align better with your values or comfort. Habits shift, priorities reorganize, time management adjusts. Change driven by love is sustainable because it is voluntary. Look at emotional reassurance patterns. When misunderstandings arise, do they clarify or ignore? Clarity indicates desire for security. Silence often indicates detachment. There is also the sacrifice of convenience. When someone chooses inconvenience to maintain connection, that choice reveals attachment strength. Humans default to convenience unless emotional value overrides it. Observe the depth of curiosity. Shallow interest asks surface questions. Deep attachment explores your thoughts, philosophies, fears, childhood stories, ambitions. Genuine curiosity sustains intimacy. Notice how they react to your independence. Secure attachment supports autonomy. Controlling behavior signals fear-based possession. If your growth is encouraged rather than restricted, attachment is healthy. There is a softness that appears in tone, body language, word choice. Psychological studies show that emotional attachment changes vocal patterns, increases warmth, reduces harshness. This is subconscious. Watch for reliability in promises. Words align with actions. Time commitments are honored. Plans are followed through. Consistency is the backbone of emotional trust. Another indicator is conflict avoidance replaced by courageous conversation. When someone risks uncomfortable dialogue to protect connection, it shows priority. There is also emotional exclusivity, not in control, but in focus. Attention does not scatter. Flirtation does not wander. Respect becomes instinctive. Notice energy levels around you. If fatigue fades when interacting with you, if mood improves consistently, that reflects dopamine association with your presence. Observe integration into daily routine. You are not an event. You are part of normalcy. Stability replaces excitement chasing. There is also empathy amplification. Emotional reactions become more sensitive to your needs. Listening deepens. When decisions consider your well-being without being requested, attachment has formed. When emotional absence creates visible discomfort, attachment has formed. When reassurance is given before doubt grows, attachment has formed. When pride softens, attachment has formed. When defensive walls lower, attachment has formed. When your happiness feels like personal achievement, attachment has formed. Love is psychological surrender. It is the gradual replacement of self-centered patterns with shared-centered thinking. It cannot be maintained artificially. It either integrates into identity or it fades. If consistency, protection, vulnerability, integration, accountability, patience, respect, effort, curiosity, and emotional regulation all align over time, not days, not weeks, but sustained, then you are not dealing with casual attraction. You are witnessing attachment psychology in motion. And attachment, when healthy, is powerful. It transforms behavior not because it has to, but because it wants to. It shifts priorities not out of obligation, but out of desire. It chooses you repeatedly in quiet ways that do not demand applause. Pay attention to patterns, not promises. Observe actions during difficulty, not only during romance. Study emotional responses during conflict, not just during affection, because love is proven in psychology long before it is declared in poetry. When effort becomes instinct, when care becomes reflex, when presence becomes stable, when vulnerability becomes safe, when future planning becomes natural, when respect becomes non-negotiable, that is not temporary interest. That is emotional capture. And when someone is emotionally captured, you do not need dramatic declarations to confirm it. The mind has already chosen. The behavior is simply revealing what the heart decided silently. Love leaves evidence, always. And when emotional attachment deepens, there is a noticeable shift in risk tolerance. Someone who once avoided uncertainty begins stepping into uncomfortable spaces simply to preserve connection. Difficult conversations are no longer threats, they become investments. Pride is no longer a shield, it becomes negotiable. This psychological flexibility is critical because the human brain is wired to avoid discomfort unless the reward outweighs the fear. When connection becomes that reward, courage increases. There is also a transformation in time perception. Time spent with you feels accelerated, yet time without you feels elongated. Neuroscience links this to dopamine and oxytocin responses associated with bonding. Emotional attachment alters the brain's reward circuitry, creating a subtle dependency, not unhealthy obsession, but emotional preference. Preference becomes priority when given consistency. Another subtle but powerful indicator is emotional transparency during stress. Under pressure, people revert to their most authentic patterns. If someone maintains respect, communication, and reassurance even when overwhelmed, that stability reflects deep-rooted care. Stress exposes truth. Temporary affection collapses under pressure. Real attachment adapts. Observe how jealousy is managed. Healthy attachment may feel protective discomfort, but it does not erupt into control or accusations. Instead, it communicates insecurity calmly and seeks reassurance constructively. Emotional maturity in jealousy signals security within attachment. Immature jealousy signals fear of loss without confidence in value. Notice the language shift. Pronouns change. I slowly becomes we. Not because identity dissolves, but because identity expands. The psychology of bonding integrates partnership into self-concept. When someone instinctively frames decisions as shared experiences, it reveals subconscious commitment. Pay attention to investment in your environment. Effort extends beyond you and into the spaces that shape you, your family, your ambitions, your routines, your well-being. Emotional attachment does not isolate you. It supports your ecosystem. It strengthens the structures that sustain you. There is also emotional endurance. Attachment does not disappear after misunderstandings, mood swings, or imperfect days. It remains steady. It absorbs fluctuations. It recalibrates instead of retreating. Emotional endurance is one of the strongest markers of deep love because it resists instability. Watch how silence is handled during tension. Avoidance creates distance. Healthy attachment initiates reconnection. If someone cannot rest comfortably while unresolved distance exists, that discomfort reflects emotional value. Peace becomes dependent on relational harmony. Notice acts of service that align specifically with your preferences, not generic gestures, but tailored actions. The brain does not customize effort without careful attention. Customization indicates observation, and observation indicates importance. Another sign appears in long-term behavioral consistency. Intensity can be manufactured, consistency cannot. When months pass and effort remains balanced, respect remains intact, and communication remains open, that longevity confirms emotional grounding. There is also emotional generosity. Support is given without keeping score. Kindness is extended without transactional expectations. When affection is not measured like a contract, attachment is sincere. Observe how boundaries are protected in public settings. Respect does not change depending on the audience. Behavior remains consistent whether alone or surrounded by others. Public consistency indicates internal conviction. Notice emotional reassurance that anticipates rather than reacts. When comfort is offered before anxiety escalates, it reflects deep emotional awareness. Anticipation requires attentiveness. Attentiveness requires care. Another powerful psychological pattern is the willingness to grow. If feedback is received thoughtfully rather than defensively, it shows desire for sustainability. Growth-oriented attachment strengthens bonds because it evolves with challenges. Watch for integration into personal routines. Daily habits subtly shift to create space for connection. Schedules adjust. Availability increases. Emotional value reorganizes time. There is also a softness in conflict tone. Even disagreement carries underlying respect. Volume lowers. Words are chosen carefully. Attachment discourages verbal harm because harm threatens connection. Observe celebration of your individuality. Healthy love does not attempt to reshape you into convenience. It appreciates distinct traits, even differences. Acceptance signals security. Notice the absence of emotional games. Communication is direct. Intentions are clear. Consistency replaces unpredictability. Emotional games are tools of insecurity. Secure attachment does not manipulate. Another subtle marker is pride in your association, not ownership, but admiration. When someone speaks of you with respect and appreciation in your absence, it reflects internal value. Pay attention to the desire for shared experiences beyond romance. Growth activities, learning opportunities, long-term planning, attachment expands beyond attraction into partnership. There is also forgiveness capacity, not tolerance of repeated harm, but grace for human imperfection. Emotional attachment allows room for mistakes while still maintaining standards. Observe emotional responsiveness. Messages are not ignored strategically. Calls are not avoided unnecessarily. Engagement reflects priority. Notice the calm presence during your anxiety. Instead of escalating fear, reassurance stabilizes you. Emotional grounding is a sign of secure bonding. Another indicator is reduced external distraction. Attention becomes selective. Focus sharpens. Emotional energy is concentrated rather than scattered. Watch for protective advocacy. When someone defends your reputation, your dignity, or your feelings even when you are not present, it reveals loyalty. There is also patience with your healing. Trauma responses are met with understanding rather than frustration. Secure attachment respects emotional timelines. Observe the willingness to compromise without resentment. Compromise reflects balance, not sacrifice of identity, but adaptation for harmony. Notice how appreciation is expressed consistently. Gratitude reinforces connection. It prevents familiarity from turning into neglect. Another sign appears in emotional repair speed. After disagreement, reconnection efforts happen promptly. Distance is uncomfortable, not preferred. There is also comfort in authenticity. Masks drop, perfectionism decreases. Emotional safety allows imperfection. Watch for physical presence that feels grounding rather than performative. Calmness replaces intensity. Stability replaces volatility. Observe how life decisions begin aligning around mutual growth. Careers, living arrangements, ambitions are discussed with shared consideration. Notice resilience during external interference. External opinions do not easily destabilize connection. Internal trust outweighs outside noise. Another subtle shift is emotional courage. Difficult truths are spoken gently rather than hidden. Transparency becomes a habit. There is also gratitude for ordinary moments. Attachment finds meaning in simplicity, not just in grand gestures. Observe how respect remains during frustration. Words do not degrade. Tone does not humiliate. Notice eagerness to learn your love language and communicate in ways that resonate with you specifically. Another psychological sign is emotional exclusivity in vulnerability. Personal struggles are shared with you first. That prioritization reveals trust hierarchy. Watch for financial responsibility or planning that considers shared future stability. There is also spontaneous affection without occasion. Care appears without prompting.